New York City, capital of the world. It used to be where people came for art, culture, uniqueness. There's even a tongue twister for it, Unique New York, Unique New York. And in the middle of it is Times Square, 13 acres in the heart of Manhattan, that has now become just another American strip mall. Unique no more. Times Square got its name in 1904 after the New York Times moved its headquarters there. In the early part of the 20th century, the area became a cultural hub of theaters, hotels, and music venues. But the Great Depression left its mark. Once beautiful theaters started to go vacant, and other businesses began to seriously struggle. In 1952, the Supreme Court case of Joseph Bernstein versus Wilson determined that laws allowing a censor to forbid the showing of a film it deemed sacrilegious to be a First Amendment violation. The case marked the decline of movie censorship in the U.S. and paved the way for
porn.
So in the 50s, you had movie houses sitting empty in Times Square, and a newly emboldened porn industry with money for rent. Once glorious empty theaters and storefronts were taken over by the sex industry, and prostitution, drugs, and crime were soon to follow. By 1960, the Times was calling 42nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenues the worst block in the city. And in 1984, 2,300 crimes happened on that small block alone. That's an average of more than 6 crimes a day. In 1981, New York State's Urban Development Corporation put together the $2.6 billion 42nd Street Redevelopment Plan. It would extend tax breaks to developers who would transform the area. Years went by while the city and the state fought over which of their cronies would be allowed to develop the new square. $40 million went to Morgan Stanley in 1992. $25 million went to Disney in 1994. $20 million went to Ernst & Young in 1999. Everyone that started to build there had a preferential deal with the government. They only gave deals to a few well-connected, deep-pocketed friends. The other part of the plan that was realized was eminent domain. 400 rent-paying, viable businesses were kicked out, and only around 40 of them were sex industry related, meaning that the government wasn't cleaning up Times Square, it was just kicking out businesses that didn't fit into their new scheme. Legitimate local establishments that created a unique New York culture that defined the city and drew tourists to experience the real New York were simply evicted. Then in 1993, Mayor Giuliani famously transformed New York City's approach to policing, and crime began to dwindle. So in the 1990s, Times Square sat emptied out by eminent domain. A bunch of huge corporations with financial deals from the city started to build. Crime rates plunged, and the economy began to boom. Giant mass distribution companies that you see everywhere across the country started moving in. Cut to today. Times Square is bustling. It overflows with people who work there in office towers and tourists who come to visit the famed Times Square. And when they get here, what do they see? Every store they'd see in any strip mall across the US. McDonald's, Sephora, Starbucks, Aeropostale. There is zero authentic New York flavor or culture. There is nothing that represents what separates New York City from any suburb. If anything, Times Square now represents American culture. That is a synthetic monument to capitalism and the bottom line. Who owns Times Square now? Faceless corporations. Big box stores who make their products for pennies in foreign countries and then mass distribute them all over the world. Sure, it's safer. You can walk through Times Square at 4 a.m. completely drunk from supersized, machine-mixed margaritas from Planet Hollywood. That's progress for you, right? So the question I have is, when it comes at the expense of culture, local jobs, and the spirit of a community, is progress always a good thing? Times Square might be safer, but no longer does it make New York unique.